Kevin Teven is Chief Revenue Officer at District, where he helps business leaders integrate their proprietary AI decision engine, where they turn a company's data into faster, smarter decisions. With that, Kevin, we're excited to have you presenting today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here as well. And what we're going to be talking about today is the growth engine playbook, specifically how I view turning AI into revenue across an organization. To kick things off, the number one thing that I'm worried about with most companies today and how they're approaching AI is what I would call an efficiency theater aspect, right? So we've all seen, right, an AI tool can summarize meeting notes, draft an email, or generate a AI creative tool generating too many things for you to even read. So the problem with that is ultimately from a revenue perspective, it's great to save time, but a lot of that 99% of this time is not impacting the bottom line. And now in 2027, or 2026 into 2027, I'm looking more towards AI shifting from a tool to what I would call a strategic operator. Business leaders, in my personal opinion, should never have really asked how to cut 10% in headcount or even how to make employees 10% faster. The ultimate decision and question you're going to have to start making tomorrow is, how can I architect a system that owns a revenue outcome end to end? And when I believe there's a three-layer hierarchy to start building that system, and that's what I really want to make sure we start touching on today. So, number one, that first layer, for me, it's always going to start with data. So, we're calling that a unified data fabric. And that's going to be, again, the infrastructure for all your data. You can't really have an intelligence core, I would call it, without a unified infrastructure. And that's where all your data, structured and unstructured, lives. It must be safe, central, and ultimately always ready to drive action. The average company makes decisions typically based on 20% of their data. And that's not just some statistic I came up with. That's quoted by a HubSpot and actually comes from a source called Databricks, if you've ever heard of them before. So while you're making decisions with, let's say, 20% of your data, where's the rest of that sitting? Trapped in CRMs, spreadsheets, media buying platforms, just some examples here on the screen. And ultimately, what this ends up leading to is what I call a visibility gap. And that's going to be the time and knowledge between something happening in your business and actually understanding its impact. So, no AI subscription will solve this. Your data fabric is going to be the foundation of truth for your business. And without it, AI operates while missing context, and you're going to lack the ability to give it the correct guardrails. When we start to think about what that second layer is going to look like, we call it the cognitive layer. My goal and my outlook on everything, from a business perspective, is this is going to be a 24/7 business strategist. Once infrastructure is in place, you have the ability to deploy, again, that cognitive layer. So if it's going to act as a 24/7 business strategist, it's going to provide answers humans simply can't. And that's going to be for a variety of reasons. A lot of them you can just start imagining. But for me, it's always going to be because of the scale and complexity across that entire unified data fabric that has been created. I would say to you right now, as you're watching me talk, take a second and maybe just imagine asking your cognitive layer for your business, why did customer acquisition costs spike over the last 5 days? Or why have sales dipped in February compared to January? You're going to be able to start getting right away a fact checked, revenue aware answer in seconds, and have, again, a conversational aspect with that cognitive layer to start moving away from what I would call as read-only dashboards, which, let's be honest, as a business leader, an executive, they're a chore to manage. And again, especially at that executive level layer. So to have a dialogue with your business, again, moving from that dashboard to a dialogue is going to become imperative and ultimately second nature for us. So when you get here, you're going to be able to reclaim time and stop decoding the past, I like to say. And then you're going to actually gain true decision intelligence to confidently make moves as a leader. Then getting to layer 3, it's always going to be for me about execution and action. So that intelligence in motion, I'm always going to say it's a quick 3-step process and as quick as you can make it, right? Data signals, insights, execution. So intelligence is just quite frankly useless if it's disconnected from your hands. Layer 3 is always going to be focused again on that execution and getting that intelligence in motion as fast as possible. Insights used to be passed through, and for a lot of folks out there, unfortunately, they're still passed through managers or agencies before being considered for action. And the future is you're going to be able to drive that execution instantly, and that would again all be done through that layer 3 connectivity. So when your cognitive layer identifies a business trend, it can ultimately, or I would say automatically, as an example, adjust resources or budgets, tailor outreach or engagement efforts, refine a process or a strategy. And again, those are just some examples to get you thinking. Ultimately, my goal is to make sure you're thinking about, hey, what would those be for me as a business leader or for my business? But no matter what, you're no longer reacting to data after the fact. You're driving outcomes in real time through a closed loop system. I would say that the difference between having information and using it to create results happens across all 3 layers, but this is again where that execution part of it happens. And again, using the data you have to actually generate results and generate revenue, this is where you get to see it in action. And again, it can happen instantly versus the previous process of sometimes it's sitting in an inbox or waiting for a meeting. I apologize. So before you start thinking too much about the solutions or the next steps, let's take a breath, and I want to share a simple diagnostic that you and or a leadership team can use to answer the main questions about what we just covered. So, number 1, seems a little obvious, but we have to call it out. Is your data truly unified, or is it scattered across platforms and logins? That's something right there. You can ask that high level question, but then you can also start to, I would say, document it, right? Like start documenting, okay, where are all these data? Who's in charge of them? Is there any way we're unifying them today, or are we not doing anything at all? That is number 1, always going to be the most important thing. And being able to start documenting it puts you ahead of the game if you're not already doing that when you start to think about how do I execute this 3-layer framework. Then the second thing you're going to want to ask is, do I have real time visibility? So, how long does it take for an insight to be in your inbox, right? Are you using lagging indicators? The whole data analyst idea, right? When I say you know, typically this is going to be a 24/7 business strategist. At the end of the day, it's also going to be that data analyst, right? And a lot of folks that I work with, I've seen that happen, right? A lot where you're waiting for that lagging indicators actually coming from the human or the data strategist. So again, where do you have real-time visibility and where do you not? Documenting that and understanding that. Is your AI generating intelligence is number 3. um you know is it drafting again ad copy or creative insights, or is it helping you actually identify growth opportunities and putting you on a pathway to revenue intelligence? Because again, drafting ad copy and creating images is definitely not the same as identifying growth opportunities that will lead to revenue and impacting that bottom line. Number 4 is, does intelligence drive execution, or is it possibly sitting in a queue for review? Is there a human bottleneck between insight and action? And again, being able to document where that happens within your business is extremely important. And again, doing those 4 questions at a high level, being able to start documenting them, that's going to put you on that pathway to actually have a conversation with whoever you're going to work with to help provide those solutions to ultimately creating a true AI native 3-layer framework. As a leader, I just hope your number one takeaway is to continue your pursuit while practicing the mindset that adding more AI to your business is not going to ultimately change anything for you. It's definitely not going to change your trajectory, right? Adding more AI is not going to change your trajectory, but building the right AI architecture will. Being able to convert that intelligence into action is the number one thing that I am out here talking about, and I hope you start to bring it back to your business and your teams. So again, build that system, close the loop, and turn intelligence into action. Thank you.
Kevin, let me ask you. So, obviously, you have quite a few organizations that are working with your team. What are some of the common use cases that you see where organizations are finding success with AI?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing that we're seeing is always going to be the ability again to kind of unify the data and have the insights from all of those siloed aspects of a business. The number one thing that I typically run into is there's not one source of truth for a business from a data perspective where they're making decisions. So, a lot of times we work across a lot of different industries on the district side. So whether it be e-commerce, right, and the ability to understand, hey, we're selling on Amazon, we're selling on Shopify, we're selling it, on retail, being able to kind of integrate that and look at them within a conversational aspect very quickly, whether together or separate, being able to understand all of those sources of revenue very, very quickly at your fingertips is something that used to take them days. In the insurance industry, the ability to kind of query a lot of different data and, different solutions, right, or products being purchased, and being able to understand how those are ultimately being purchased, at what volume, at a velocity across all these different geographies, being able to kind of pull that together and understand that in real time. Just again, another example. And then just from my perspective, right? Like my background is in, I would say, performance marketing, right? I come from that traditional media buying agency background. And with that kind of being said, the ability to sort all of the platforms you're buying media on, right? And having paid media placements on, to be able to kind of bring that together and have a much more active and real time conversation with that data to make much better decisions is something I see pretty much every day because we specialize in that. So yeah, I think those are just some of the examples, but you can kind of see I spread them across a lot of
Yeah,
different
across.
ways businesses are looking at them.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out to present today. Coming up in just a few minutes for everyone that is listening live, you have a Q&A box right in front of you. Type in all your questions that you have for Kevin. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll have the live Q&A panel, and we'll do our best to answer as many of those questions during the
Absolutely.
live Q&A panel.